Jennifer Trimble, the Sergeant and Acting Manager of Public and Government Relations for Peel Regional Police. Thank you for joining us as we've concluded today's summit. Chief Nishan Duryappa is leading our news conference today, and he's joined by many chiefs and deputies who do not require introduction, but it is my pleasure to do so. Joining us here on my right, your left, is Chief Stephen Tanner of Halton Regional Police, Deputy Chief Alvaro Almeida of York Regional Police, Deputy Commissioner Marty Kearns of the Ontario Provincial Police, Commissioner Thomas Carrick of the Ontario Provincial Police, Deputy Chief Nick Milinovich of Peel Regional Police, Chief Nishan Duryappa of Peel Regional Police, Nando Yanika, Chair of the Peel Regional Police Service Board, Patrick Brown, the Mayor of the City of Brampton, Deputy Chief Robert Johnson of Toronto Police Service, and Chief Bill Forty of Niagara Regional Police. At the conclusion of the press conference, there will be an opportunity for questions. Please keep the questions specific to the Auto Theft Summit. At the conclusion of this media event, there will be an opportunity for one-on-ones with our dignitaries dependent on each chief's availability. A media release will be issued shortly after the conclusion of the news conference, and a full video of this conference will be made available on the Peel Regional Police YouTube channel, which can be accessed from our website. I now invite Police Service Board Chair Nando Yanika to the podium. Chair.
Thank you very much, and welcome everybody. Well, I tell you, it's been such an intensive 5 or 6 hours from 7 or 8 a.m. this morning, and I first want to thank the organizers, the people that made this possible behind the scenes, and our chief and the Peel Regional Police Service and all the efforts that they've done on this file, and my board as well. You know, we were here a year ago and we were talking about this problem, and I'm so proud of how Peel has been at the vanguard, and yet look at all the partners that we have here, 9 service agencies working together on this very critical issue. You know, I think Deputy Chief Milinovich said it well, as did the chief and some of the other chiefs. We've come a long way in a year, and yet we're at a critical point because it's gotten to the point where we're starting to address the problems. I think our partners are more acutely aware of the challenges, and yet it's as critical as it's been in many cases. As one of the chiefs said, when it gets to the point where there's carjackings at gunpoint, and when it gets to the point where people are knocking down your doors at 3 a.m., it's no longer the kids just taking a car for a joyride. And it means a great deal to all of us that people know that they live in peace and tranquility and safely in their communities and in their front yards and in their garages. So this is a big issue. So on the one hand, I praise everyone for all that has been done, but we're not resting on our laurels. There is so much more to do, and that's why I think our symposium today, our summit today, has been such a huge success, because I think everyone is acutely aware of that. So nice work that's been done, still much, much more to do, and my thanks to everybody involved that have made this a success and are redoubling our efforts to get rid of this scourge in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I would now like to call upon Chief Nishan Duryappa. Chief.
Thank you very much, and thank you for all attending today. Earlier today here in Peel, we had the privilege of hosting, which is our 2nd annual Auto Theft Summit. And I do want to acknowledge the police leadership that is behind us here. Of the largest affected police agencies for this auto theft crisis here in Ontario, inclusive of 8 municipal police services and, of course, the OPP and the OPP commissioner that's here. I do want to acknowledge that we have elected officials here. Mayor Brown, who's been very strong supporter of the issues that are being faced in the community, as well as Chair Nando Yanika, who also chairs our police service board, let alone the region. But I know we have multiple people here. Some of them have had to egress, but I do want to acknowledge that across the policing perspective, we've been working hand in hand significantly for a long time on this issue. We know that the public continues to face the pressures and the vulnerability, but they need to know that there's a strong connection between agencies. And here today are Durham Regional Police Service, Halton Regional Police, Hamilton Regional Police, Niagara Regional Police, the Ontario Provincial Police, Peel Regional Police, Toronto Police Service, York Regional Police, as well as the Criminal Intelligence Service of Ontario and the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police that represents all the police agencies. All of their representatives work extremely hard behind the scenes. But what makes today extremely unique is that it wasn't just police sector here. And the same thing as last year, we want to recognize that today represented our automotive industry partners, manufacturers, dealers, distribution, parts, insurance, advocacy agencies such as the CAA. All of them were here again for the second year, and I am abbreviating the list of entities, and on the media release you will see a list of the alliance partners. All of you know that organized crime is a factor in many different elements that cause risk to our community. It needs to be stated that this is organized auto theft that we are dealing with, that are facing issues, as was mentioned by Chair Unica. The nature of these auto thefts, as we've seen, are now shifting to things like home invasions, carjackings, and the use of illegal firearms. Two of the agencies that have been here today have seen a 400% increase in home invasions in the last 1 year. We know and recognize that these trends are becoming an increasingly grave concern for residents and for public safety. And if you have an opportunity to speak to Mayor Brown, he hears it from his constituents, the community daily, and can articulate it really well. In 2023, the collective data between Peel, Toronto, York, Durham, Halton, Hamilton, Niagara, Ottawa, and the OPP showed a 116% increase in auto thefts since 2019. You need to know that in this last year, a significant amount of efforts have been made in the area of auto thefts. Over 16,000 auto thefts have been recovered jointly with a value of over $545 million. In this last year also, thank you to the province as well as the OPP in Toronto for coordinating the establishment of a provincial carjacking joint task force, which all of these entities and agencies have participated in since October of last year. Since then, that task force has laid over 730 criminal charges and recovered over 150 vehicles, including the seizure of numerous firearms and contraband. I want to share that in aiming to address auto theft and the challenges that we are seeing, we recognize there needs to be a collective endeavor to protect the neighborhoods that we all serve and ensure that lives and the community safety are not put at risk. The purpose of today is to say that we recognize it is not one sector or one entity's responsibility alone to solve this. It cannot be fixed alone. And the recognition as of today and as of this last year is that valuable partners and stakeholders, whether it be the auto industry, the policing sector, all levels of government need to come together to find a solution for organized auto theft. That is why last year's summit, law enforcement came together with government and the auto sector to advocate for paths forward. We know that by increasing our collaborative efforts and implementing targeted investigations and interventions, we can disrupt organized auto theft. At today's summit, we had over 150 representatives of the largest police services, and there have been representatives from Vancouver all the way to Halifax joining the agencies here, along with government officials, auto manufacturers, and insurance industries, as I said, distribution, advocacy partners committed to tackling this issue. Through active participation and meaningful discussions today, we have transpired and come to two key recommendations under two large areas. The first is strengthening enforcement efforts that remain the cornerstone of disrupting auto theft. And that's just not from a policing perspective. We believe auto theft must be prioritized as a national priority, and the federal government must double down on its ability to make inspections at ports of exit, where inspections of containers at intermodal ports, like right here in neighboring agencies like York or in Peel are connected to ports of export like Montreal that have a high volume of stolen autos leaving this country. I need to be clear, of the autos that are being stolen here in Ontario, 80% are destined for exportation. In addition to the enforcement enhancements, we do believe that legislative tools and the appropriate sanctions are required for organized auto theft. We do also believe that a national action plan to tackle organized auto theft needs to occur, which also means enhanced investments in our abilities to police this at a national level. The second big area is making the collaboration between multi-sector stakeholders a sustainable piece. The collaboration, raising awareness with our residents, can protect against auto theft, whether it be by anti-theft technologies, enhancing security measures around homes, looking at registries, and out of today came multiple solutions that we intend on exploring in the year to come. In closing, I want to express my gratitude to all those that were here today. As was stated earlier, the police leaders and elected officials that are behind me are available to respond to some of the nuances and challenges that we're facing, but also the solutions. Just to be clear, today is a day that we have not seen as it pertains to risk in our community, where we've seen multiple sectors come together to bring solutions in a coordinated fashion and also commit to sustaining this as we move forward. Our recommendations and guiding actions are intended to mitigate this harm that is affecting our community. We know the vulnerability it causes to families, to individuals, to neighborhoods is so significant. The public needs to know that auto theft is one thing, but once it crosses a line, and I'm going to call it the red line, where it compromises people's homes, their safety, carjackings, their ability to go out in public, or to even leave their children home alone at the fear that somebody might be entering their home for a set of car keys, is too much. And we are all committed to drawing the line right there. So thank you again for being here, and we look forward to answering some questions. And Jennifer, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Chief. I would now like to call upon Mayor Patrick Brown, the Mayor of Brampton. Sir?
I just want to say thank you to Chief Nish for organizing this second Auto Theft Summit. This is terrorizing our residents. And wherever you live in Ontario or Quebec, we're seeing numbers that have skyrocketed. This is a gift to organized crime. $1.2 billion in 2022. Right here is some of the smartest minds when it comes to law enforcement, who dedicate every hour of the day to keeping us safe. And when Chief Nish mentions the solutions that are before us that could help us really suffocate and disrupt this flourishing criminal enterprise, delay is not an option. I actually don't want to go to future auto theft summits. I'm hoping we can solve it. I've been to the first Peel Auto Theft Summit, went to the National Auto Theft Summit, spoke there, and of course we have this summit today. I'm looking forward to the solutions which have been articulated by law enforcement being acted upon by government. I equate this auto theft crisis to a giant bucket of water, and there's a hole, and water is leaking out. That's the Port of Montreal right now. We need to make sure we have scanning capacity at our hubs and our ports to make sure that stolen goods can't be so easily taken out of our country. The same rigorous approach we have for imports we must have for exports. Because if we don't, my worry is, no matter how hard law enforcement works, and you hear about increasing numbers in terms of arrest and repatriation of cars, unless we deal with this hole in the bucket, it doesn't matter if we have a 14% police budget increase, it's going to continue to be a crisis in our country. I really hope that the solutions articulated by the team here today will be heard, and that very soon in the future that residents are going to get a sign of relief, that we're not going to see doors being banged down and violent carjackings. Because of the funds at stake, north of 1.2 billion, criminal organizations are going to extreme lengths to seize upon this. Delay is not an option. 3 years to get scanners, as the funding's over 3 years. I want to see that procurement out yesterday. I want to see those scanners not only in the Brampton Intermodal Hub, but in Vaughan and the Port of Montreal yesterday.
Thank you, Mayor. At this time, I'm going to open up the floor for questions. I would ask that you keep it to one question with one follow-up, and if you would like to see my media officer over to my left who has the microphone so that everybody can hear your question, I would appreciate that. Thank you.
For Appeals Police Chief. Can you just talk about Mississauga and Brampton? Can you confirm that Peel region is sort of the auto theft capital of Canada, and why is that?
Sadly, we do have the data that we shared together at the summit today with our partners. We know that we do have the highest rate per capita here in Peel region, which is a data point which I know none of us are pleased to communicate. So, slowly behind are the other urban centers, York and Toronto, that are nearby. Listen, I think if you look at the data, and our auto industry individuals will tell you about the sales of automotive vehicles nationally, and you think about the proportion of vehicles sold in Ontario, and I think 70% of them are in the GTA area. And if you look at the GTA, the confluence of the 400 series highways, our logistics hubs, and the sheer population volume that is in Peel region, we do see the ability to get on the 401 for those that are being exported to get to Montreal with ease. So, as you know, we've got a high rate of growth in this region as well. So there's many vehicles that are in this community. If you take all those and you add the ease of an ability to steal a vehicle, it just makes it very ripe for auto theft here. And, it could shift poorly depending on where municipalities are. But that is sort of our explanation for why there is a core hub in the GTA.
What role does the auto industry and automakers need to play in cracking down on these crimes?
Sure, I think those were the discussions today. So I think we'd all agree that there's no one particular solution for auto thefts. If auto thefts are oriented to just the auto industry, who have potentially the ability to look at design, manufacturing, if it's the auto insurance industry, incentives for aftermarket activities, as well as discussing national regulatory frameworks that prevent revinning of stolen autos, which is a fraudulent resale. There are multiple solutions in there, and they have the line of sight. This is not new. If you speak to the auto industry, you've seen waves of this over the last decade or two, and so they have the ability to contribute to solutioning. One thing we discussed today is that, and I hate using this term, but by then sometimes the toothpaste is out of the tube. So there is a need to get upstream, to look at why it's so profitable for vehicles to be stolen as a commodity and used to support organized crime, which may be out of the hands necessarily of the auto industry. So I just want to refocus. The auto industry is a key component alongside policing and law enforcement, but the ability for our federal entities that assist us at ports of exit, of where exportation exists, legislative reform, our ability to transcend jurisdictions. There's multiple levels, and can I tell you, it goes beyond that. These vehicles are ending up in other countries, and our ability, in which we've, the OBP commissioner can perhaps speak to it, the efforts to work with Interpol and other international entities for us to solution it are all part of the equation. So, although the auto industry as a macro was here en masse, it doesn't necessarily solely sit on their shoulders, but they are definitely key contributors to this conversation.
Hi, pleasant afternoon, everybody. My question is to Chief Nish. Firstly, this is Hamreen Kaur from Punjab TV. Given that fact that talking about Brampton and Mississauga specifically, we have seen high cases of auto thefts, car hijackings, break-enters to a very large extent. I just fail to understand this point that why is anybody not talking about the wake bail reforms? Because we have seen that the cases of auto thefts, hijackings, they have been done repeatedly by the repeated offenders. And we have also seen, a couple of days back, we have received some press release from the, Peel Police, given that fact, said that public safety advisory was issued because one of the offender was released on bail. Why is anybody not talking about the wake bail reforms? Because we know somewhere or the other they are the repeated offenders who resultantly give, rise to such crimes.
So thank you for the question. Really the individuals involved in I don't want to call it an ecosystem, but the ecosystem of auto theft in an organized fashion involve a variety of different individuals at different points in the system. Some of them, as we know, are repeat offenders or have a disregard where the risk for committing the offense versus the penalty is disproportionate in their minds and therefore continue to reoffend. Some of them are involved in violent crimes. I just need to say that, just to reframe everybody's perspective, is that the policing sector has been very, very bold in our commentary on repeat violent offenders. And we are privileged to have not only elected officials that have been out front of that here, let alone in Peel, right across this province. We do have the OPP commissioner here who has led on a national level the discussions as it pertains to bail reform and the reforms as it pertains to repeat offenders. Maybe I'll just use the opportunity to have my colleagues here speak to that because it is deeply intertwined, and we've seen the discussion here or in Toronto where individuals involved with violent offenses have been released or reoffending. So, Commissioner, do you mind if I ask you to contribute?
Thank you very much, Chief, and thank you for your question. It is an important one. Repeat violent offenders are involved in this criminal market. They are putting officers at risk. They're putting the public at risk. And there's been great progress made that promises good opportunity to improve public safety. Bill C-48 has been enacted by the federal government, which reforms bail legislation. And there's a commitment to analyze the impact of that over the next 5 years and then determine what other changes are required. At a provincial level, the provincial government has invested substantially through the Ministry of Attorney General to build bail teams, prosecutors, increase the number of prosecutors. There's been an investment in the provincial ROPE, which is the Repeat Offender Parole Enforcement Unit, bail enforcement teams right across the province. The Toronto Police Service took an enormous lead on behalf of policing and built a platform that shares intelligence and enforcement information right across the province for every repeat violent offender who is out on conditions, so the police can, in a strategic, systematic, and collaborative way, prioritize those that pose the greatest risk to public safety. So as you can see, there's a lot of work being done to ensure that we're protecting communities from these repeat violent offenders, and we look forward to seeing how this new legislation will help our officers do their jobs, which is keep the community safe, and our jobs as police leaders to keep our officers safe.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Nitin Chopra from Prime Asia TV. In last 1 year, this is the third auto summit. There were 2 by the Peel Police and 1 national auto summit. Canadians want to know, are we in circles? Because when we interviewed one of the deputy chief and he said there is a barriers for the professional police forces and we cannot cross those barriers. In last, how this auto summit is different than previous 2, which was a national level also. And in last auto summit, as chief mentioned, in last auto summit by the Peel Police, the CBSA was there, but they were not the participant in the discussion. They were there, they were watching what is happening, but they were not the participant. What is the outcome of today's auto summit? Were the politicians here? Because in Brampton, we have 5 members of parliament, 3 MPPs, the councillors, only one person who speaks loudly is Mayor Brown. Every time he was vocal, otherwise all the politicians, we never saw them in any of the media to come and discuss this issue. And thanks to Peel Police, who highlighted this issue day and night, and we salute our police officers because they are there for us. But where are the politicians, and how can we control it? If Mayor Brown can make a video from Ottawa, promotional video even though, but where are the other member of parliaments or MPPs, and how police can cross those barriers to bring politician on the board and do something? As Mayor said that 3 years for the scanners coming is not the solution. Either Mayor or Deputy Chief can answer, or Deputy Chief. Thank you.
Just to say, it was heartening to see Minister Vrani here today. He's the Federal Justice Minister. And also Michael Kersner, the Solicitor General, has been very active on the file. I would say in 2022, the government was absent from the conversation. That's not the case today, so I don't think we're going in a cycle. I think this is positive that we have all the key partners at the table. I think the question now is there the urgency to accept the solutions that law enforcement has recommended?
And if I could, I want to thank you for the question, because I think you hit it right on the head. And we don't want to go around in circles. I said during the conference, one of my phrases over the years is, I hate wasting people's time, especially my own. And this is the third conference, and we need results. I thank the individuals beside me and what our enforcement officials do, but you understand that these are the tail end of the system. They get the call when your car's gone. Nobody standing here is responsible for your car being gone. We don't build them, we don't manufacture them, we don't create the new technologies to prevent cars from being stolen. We can't mandate that they're included in automobiles. We learned today that the legislation to deal with the upgrading of automobile standards hasn't been dealt with in Canada since 2007. So your question is very, very well put. On the positive side, I think we were listened to today. I think we put the questions that you put, saying we're hearing about devices, we're hearing about maybe not having the ports be so porous. Mayor Brown has led the charge, as you quite rightly say, on what should be done and what we can do and some of the low-hanging fruit. And so on behalf of the organizations and the people that are here today and who they represent, we're doing the best we can, but you're calling us after the dike is broken. And we need their help to repair the dike, and I put Mayor Brown at the vanguard. The ministers were both here. They're listening. They have come a long way, but we still have a way to go. Thank you very much for your question.
Hello. Yeah, follow-up is for Chief from Toronto. Officer Jeff Northrop, the person who was involved, he's out on bail. Being a police chief, we salute all police officers because they are there for us, saving us day and night. How you feel being a police chief that that person who committed that crime, he's out on bail? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. And what you will know is that case is currently before the court. The trial, I think, just started on Monday. So, I'd be remiss to speak, before the facts have been heard. In that matter. But what I can say is this: that the facts would have been put before, the court. They would have to weigh the conditions, and we have to trust that our system made the right decision. Even though personally we may have, take a position on that without having all the facts. I don't think it's fair for me to say, that justice wasn't done with respect to providing bail to that individual.
Thank you, Chief. Just to remind you, please keep your questions specific to Auto Theft Summit. And there's a lot of people here wanting to ask questions. So please, I also remind you that we will be breaking off on one-on-ones very shortly. So if you have questions not within that purview, if you could please hold those questions for the one-on-ones. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. Sean O'Shea with Global News. A couple of my questions were answered, so I'll ask another one. Isn't this Auto Summit and what you're saying here basically an acknowledgement that there's really nothing police can do? Because as the police board chair said a moment ago, these crimes are happening before you're getting involved. But you're also talking about, additional resources, which means more money. How is that going to help solve the problem when somebody gets their car stolen off their driveway? Isn't it time for an admission that there's really nothing that the police can do to solve the problem? which happens, as the board chair said, before you guys get involved, you people get involved?
No, thank you very much for that question. And it certainly is true. We are reactive in a lot of ways when we're called to a victim's residence or to an intersection where they've had their car stolen at gunpoint or knife point. That's all reactive. But I think the other thing that we do, and it's a very important role that everyone on that side of the cameras and the microphones are playing, is that to get the word out about this community safety and well-being issue. There were two really good analogies used here today. First, Nish was talking about 80% of the vehicles destined for Montreal. And the analogy of the water in the bucket, I wish I'd used that weeks ago. If you could plug that hole, 80% of these vehicles, 80% of these victims would not have been stolen, they wouldn't have been victimized. Because they're stolen, they know the profit's there, and they know the vehicles are going to get out through Montreal. So what we also need to do, police leaders, politicians, citizens and media, are put out a call for people to voice their concerns about being victimized and about the fact that the Port of Montreal is a major part of that, and call on the federal government and others to invest adequately and appropriately to plug that hole in that water bucket.
Quick follow-up. And that goes to what police are telling drivers, consumers, people that own these vehicles. A Toronto police officer was vilified recently when he gave advice about where the keys should be left. So could one of the chiefs, deputy chiefs, or other people up here give a single piece of concrete advice to people driving cars, what they can do individually? One piece of advice that may not be so controversial, or may be, but what they should do to try to prevent this happening to them.
Well, unfortunately, there's not one specific piece, because each individual vehicle, obviously, we've seen different types of attacks in order to steal those vehicles. I think owners are best served to understand their vehicle. We as a police community have been putting out a number of different crime prevention tips that they're all available to the public. But we've talked about for people to, when they do have garages, to safely park their vehicles in a garage, or to park in their driveway if they have video surveillance. Anything they can do to make that vehicle less attractive to thieves. And we've also talked about going back to the club as being a prevention device, again, just to make the vehicle that much more difficult for the thieves to see as an attractive vehicle to steal.
This is going to be our last question.
Mark Winton, Car Questions YouTube channel. In response just to that, on YouTube, there are plenty of videos on how to turn off the Toyota key. You simply push a few buttons. There's lots of videos on it. It will kill the key. It's dead. The Chrysler vehicles, the Ram trucks, the Jeep Grand Cherokee, there's a button that you can access through the settings on the car that, of course, turn off the passive system. And if you turn off those systems or the key, you stop relay attacks. What I wanted to ask is, I've got a sheet here with over 35 patented solutions by the auto companies and their suppliers that deal with relay attacks. Some go back a decade. I'd like to know why no one's bringing up these patented, tested, and developed solutions that the auto companies themselves actually did.
Well, thank you. I really do appreciate the question, because early on when we started to identify this as an issue, one of the first things we did was look to the auto manufacturers. You may have heard me talk about how important it is for people when they're considering buying an automobile to look at some of the security features attached to it. Well, since then, we've had multiple meetings with manufacturers. I've met with CEOs of some of the largest auto manufacturers in the country and asked them directly, very directly, what are you doing in this space? And you know, the answers, I'm going to be entirely honest, surprised me. There is a lot of work being done. That's not to say that their work is done. Very similar to ours. So, you know, as quick as different devices or anti-theft devices are incorporated, there's an equal number of YouTube videos that explain how to defeat those. So we're in a constant battle, which is why today is not just about one sector. It's not just about the manufacturers. It needs to be coupled with enforcement activity. It needs to be coupled with other industry stakeholders to make sure that we build a comprehensive and well-balanced program. Because if we just pick one, we're never going to continue, or we're never going to plug all those gaps that currently exist.
Thank you, Deputy. Chief Forty, I believe you wanted to make a comment on a previous question.
Yeah, thank you. And I earlier there was a question about is there nothing the police can do? As I listened to the question and I reflected on it, I thought about how the police have in Peel, the chief, the deputy, commissioner of the OPP, how they have effectively mobilized the policing community. They have mobilized government. They have mobilized the private sector to bring everybody together. This wouldn't happen today without the leadership that stands behind me and beside me. And I think it's really important that we acknowledge the police do play an important role, and the police have taken this responsibility very seriously. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Again, I thank you all for your questions and for attending today. This concludes the formal media event. If the chiefs who are available for one-on-ones can remain behind for media